It's cloudy, man, and I'm in here indoors talking to you guys about fishing. We ought to be out there on the lake jerking them. I'm telling you, they'll be biting today. During this time, usually 50 to 55 degree water temperatures, the male crappie will start fanning out nests in the shallows. The females will move shallow looking for food, and they'll focus their fishing efforts on shallow waters where spawning will occur. So basically, crappie are like every other fish. When the spawning time hits, they start moving shallow. The males will move up, they'll prepare the beds, and then the females will follow. The perfect spawning water temperature is 62 to 65 degrees. When you go crappie fishing, you can take some basic stuff that I've got up here on this table and fish for years with it, maybe add a few things to it. So that's the beauty of it. You don't take a lot of expensive stuff to get involved, and you can have as much fun as you want to crappie fishing. All right, rods and reels, rod holders, bobbers, flies, road runners, soft plastics, lead heads, crankbaits, fraybill minnow bucket, small net, aerator with a stone. If you've got a bigger bucket, life jacket, snacks, water, and sunscreen. If you had all of those up here and you could only take one, what would you pick? Snacks. That's a man after my own heart right there. Little Debbie cakes, you're good to go, right? Sunscreen. I'm going to tell you what you need to say. Y'all have not got the answer yet. Right here's the answer, the life jacket. And I tell you why. Every year, I've had family members that have drowned. There were some other circumstances involved. They weren't behaving the right way, and I'll leave it at that, but they drowned. And it's sad. They left behind a young family, and once you're drowned, you don't come back. So there's nothing worth losing your life over a few little fish or a few big fish. These are on sale. I work here. I'm not trying to sell you something just to sell you a product. I've had 5 or 6 of these over the last several years. I keep them in my boat. I love to fish by myself in the wintertime or summertime or whatever. My wife hates it. She says it's not really smart to go out there in the water by yourself, especially in the wintertime. So to make her, ease her mind and make me feel a little safer, you can fish out of these inflatable. They're auto inflatable. If you fall overboard, you don't have to pull anything. The water pressure will set them off. They'll blow up and save your life. You can fish out of them all day long, even with the bulky winter clothing, and they're great. They're on sale. I think they're 70-some bucks. The rods and reels, this little deal here, you don't need to spend a lot of money on crappie rods. This is about the right action, and you don't need a lot of high-dollar stuff. But this is another one of the little deals on sale this weekend for the crappie weekend. This one's regular, I think, $79. This is a quality crappie rod and reel, okay? If there is such a word, I guess, most time we just get a zip code 202 or something like that. But this is a really good one-piece rod, a really nice, sweet little reel on it, and I think they're $49.99. So get you something you can put 4 to 6 pound test on. Don't overdo it. It's all you need. If you've got kids or someone who can't use a spinning reel, we've got these little 202s over here. They work great. Push button reels, put them a bobber on, you're good to go. I've got grandkids and they love them. One thing that some people forget, I always forget myself, all of these spinning reels now that are made, you can switch them with the handle from left to right. All you got to do is loosen the nut on the side, pull it out, turn it around, put the handle in that side, tighten the nut up on this side, and you can use it in either hand. So some people say, well, I'm not left-handed, I'm right-handed, I want to reel over here. All you got to do is take the nut apart, pull everything apart, switch it around, put it in the other side. It's real simple. And then you got a right-handed reel. Small pear-shaped floats and a small little split shot will get you set up for minnow fishing, okay? Some people prefer to use a lead head or a little jig head and a minnow, but you can get by with just a little number 8 hook, bait keeper hook, one little split shot, and a bobber. Don't do like I've saw some people do with the bobbers. I've seen people have a bobber out there that jaws couldn't pull down, okay? You're fishing for a fish this big and the bobber that big, he couldn't pull it down if he had 10 of his buddies with him, okay? And what happens is, most of the time you see that, you've got kids. I've saw people rig up kids that way, and they never catch a fish because the bobber sits there. It may wiggle or it won't go under. So use a real tiny float. It's all about physics. A little bitty fish can pull a little bitty float under, and when it goes under, everybody knows the jerk. So it's real simple, but a lot of people, like I said, make it real complicated. This little Minnow Bucket here from Fraybill, It's a sweet little deal. It's you can tie your rope on it. It's got the holes in the back. You can drop it overboard to fill it up with water, turn it upside down, flush it out, keep the minnows alive. Everything's sealed up. You can latch it to where they don't get out on you. That little thing latches. And here's the cool thing about it. If you want to get your minnows out, snap the lid open. You don't have to hold it open with your hand. Get your little handy dandy net, scoop out the minnows. You don't have to get your hand wet. And then when you get ready to close it back, you just snap the lid. There you go. That's one of the most awesome tips that you'll learn right there today is that fray bill minnow bucket and the little net. Someone asked me last night at the show, what size minnows do you use? You know, when I go buy minnows at the tackle shop, I tell them I want the crappie minnows. You know, they're usually about 2 inches long, seems to work the best. Okay, what size you use may be a little different, but everybody usually they're about 2 inches long, and you know, smaller for me is better on the crappie, the size of minnows. If you don't have a crappie checker, a fray bill, I don't know if anybody else makes them. I'm sure they do, but these fray bills are durable, and man, they're easy. You catch them, drop them in on their head, and then fan their tail up here. It's got the graduations on it. Around here, 10 inches is kind of our standard length, so it's real easy to check. You don't want to have to be laying them on a board in a boat, fooling with them when your buddy's catching 3 or 4 and you're trying to measure one, okay? It takes time, but these here, you drop them down in there, fan them, chunk them in the live well. Really cool little deal. The spinners, a couple of different kinds of spinners. One is a beetle spin, and one is a roadrunner. 2 totally different baits. The one on the right, my right, your left, is a beetle spin. This one over here is a roadrunner. If you catch the crappie up shallow getting ready to spawn, this is one of the most easiest, funnest, there you go, I'm from East Tennessee, y'all get that, but one of the most fun ways to catch them, because all you do is cast it, slow it down and wind it. And man, I mean, if they're on these things, they're up shallow, and just be careful if you're throwing them around cover. Just learn, you know, you can go, if you get hung up, usually you're going to scare the fish away out of that cover, but go in there and just take your time and get loose and go fish another brush pile and come back. Ledges, we used to, you know, a lot of bass fishing guys, we think at Kentucky Lake and different places, Chickamauga and some of those places got really offshore ledges. But what we're talking about for crappie, these are shallow ditches, cuts and gullies near the bankside bluffs or coves. The ledges are especially productive when found near other crappie cover like brush piles, trees, docks, you know, anything that may hold the crappie. Medium-sized 1/16 to 1/8 ounce jigs are ideal lures for fishing the ledges. A 1/16 ounce jig head and just a little small chartreuse grub. I mean, color makes a lot of difference, but the way I look at it, as long as it's chartreuse, you're good. You know? Brush up on your fishing. Brush piles are killer locations. Plant your own. Locate other brush piles with your electronics and mark them with your GPS. They'll hold fish all the time. I've got a buddy that works all winter building his brush piles because we draw the lakes down around here. He goes out and builds his brush piles, and when the lake comes up, he's got his own little private places to fish. People forget where they are. So I keep asking him if he'll put his GPS locations on them so I can go find them, and he don't seem to like that deal. Points and crankbaits, pre-spawn crappie often hold on points sloping toward bottom channels, and the best lures are small, deep diving crankbaits. Light line, 4 to 6 pound test, crank the lure down to the proper depth and just crawl it, okay? You want it banging along the bottom. Stay away from brush if you can. If you get hung up, go get it, but the crappie will be in the brush, and sometimes you can bang those little crankbaits through there. If you get them through the brush, you'll get bit. But one of the things that I like more than anything around here, we've got a lot of muddy flats and pockets, all right? If you can find a point that comes out on those little muddy flats, and like here or here or here, and you find some just small river rock pebbles or something, maybe as 5 to 6 foot around, or just little pockets of them. Usually there's a little drop off to them. Most of the time you see one of those, you got just a little bit of edge to them. And those crappie, when they're coming up in the spawn, that's going to be one of the first places they stop. And if you know where those are, you can pick them off. And usually there's not brush on them. You can throw a grub, you can throw a crankbait, you can throw whatever you want to, and don't get hung up. So look, while the lake's down a little bit, ride around, walk around if you fish from the shore, find you some of these little places like this. It's got little gravel pocket, little piles of gravel, and that's where they'll be. I promise you. You'll be fishing along, and every once in a while you'll feel it go thunk. I mean, you'll feel it pretty much go thunk. But most of the time, if you're letting that little jig fall, or that little grub fall, they will hit it coming up and knock slack in it, and the line will just lay on the water. So if you're pulling that little grub and letting it fall, and you're line, you don't feel anything, you just see the line go, you better jerk, because they've come up from the bottom and they've hit that thing, not slacking. So if you just wait, sometimes they may spit it out, but the worst thing you can do, not in just crappie fishing, but any other fishing, if you think you've got a bite, jerk. It does not cost anything, and the only thing it's going to cost you is if you don't jerk and there was a fish, you may miss it. But that's the best bite in the world. If that tree over there is where I'm fishing beside of, and I throw that little old grub over there and it's free falling, and that line just goes, just lays on the bottom, man, I'm ready, okay? Be ready. Everybody's got their own little terms, you know, when you fish with your buddy, what they do and different stuff. And one of the terms we use when we're crappie fishing or crappie fishing is hovering. The bobber will hover. That's what we call it. And what that means is you'll be shaking this little bobber along, and it won't go under, and it won't turn over on its side, but it acts different. I can't explain it, but we call it hovering. If you've done it very long, that bobber will just kind of go, ooh. It may go under just barely, and you know, what it is, that crappie's either come up totally underneath it, or it's come to the side and knocked a little bit of slack in it, but it hadn't run off with it for whatever reason. And sometimes those are the most hardest bites to detect, but sometimes they're your best fish. So if you're fishing that bobber and it hovers, if it don't act right, there's nothing out there that's going to make it move other than what's underneath it, and you're not moving it with your rod, and you see that bobber go about halfway down and kind of roll a little bit, or if it just kind of acts strange, jerk. Don't cost anything, but when that bobber hovers, you can remember where you heard that. When you see the bobber hover and you jerk the first time to catch one, you'll know what I'm talking about. All right, I'm gonna close it out by telling a fish tale. You see the guy in the picture there, he's a good friend of mine, and he invited me to go crappie fishing last year. We'd never crappie fished. He's telling me how many he's catching. So I showed up down there. He said, just meet me at the lake, bring a rod and reel. I have everything set up. So we went out and fished all day, and he said, I've got a surprise for you when you get back to the boat. I thought, okay, not a big deal. So we fished, and we caught 19 keepers. We thought we'd catch a limit, but we didn't, 15 per person. We went back. I backed the boat in the water. He loaded up, and he said, did you see your surprise in the back of the boat, or the truck? And I said, no, what are you talking about? And he said, well, look in the cooler. Went in the cooler. He had me 2 bags of crappie fillets already filleted out, frozen in the bags in the cooler for me to take home. Now, I told him, I said, man, you're the greatest crappie fishing buddy I've ever had, you know. No, I'm done. You know, my wife may want to marry you or whatever, because, I mean, that just don't happen. So he took the ones we caught today and took them home, cleaned them, and kept those. But so if you've got a friend or a buddy who will bring you crappie fillets, you've got a friend for life.